You must be a proud man.
Well, yes, very much so. But I went right down to the wire, as I told you earlier. The week it was to be released, I woke up in a cold sweat a couple of times, and I was going to myself, I can't do this, I can't go through with this, I'm going to embarrass myself, humiliate myself. But that wasn't the case. I did go through with it, and I've been blew away with people's response and the reaction, the reviews, and the support that I've had. I'm absolutely blew away.
And I think the being blew away, sitting in Waterstones on Saturday afternoon, I think 3 or 4 years ago, you wouldn't have thought you'd have been sitting here as the centre of attention with an autobiography. Tell me, Eamon, about when the idea, or when you believed that you were going to put pen to paper and tell your story, and what is it about your story that, makes it different?
It wasn't so much I wanted to tell my story, I wanted to tell my dad's story. And everything else was woven around it. That was the initial thing that I wrote. And I said to myself, well, I'll barely get a chapter out of this, never mind a book. But there's people out there who know stories about my dad, and hopefully maybe one day a book will be published, because he had an amazing life. But yes, that's what it was all about, my dad, and wanting to write about my dad. And everything else that followed was supporting that.
Just
the star of the show.
He's the star of the show. Just by way of information, Patsy Coco McAuley was a legend on the streets of Belfast. He was a hard man whenever Belfast did have its litany of hard men, and very proudly Eamon looks up to his father as the father figure and somebody who inspired him. But tell me this, Eamon, 1966, I'm not saying you were responsible for the start of our troubles, but your birth did coincide with the place going downhill a bit. But tell me about Ardoyne in 1966, your memories.
We lived in Butler Street, then we moved to Ligonene, then we moved to Fairfield Street in 1969, 1970. And the Troubles had exploded. It was tumultuous. And, it was day and daily. Growing up, I had a gun pointed to me every day of my life. Stopped, searched and questioned, pre-checked, asked to be an informer, asked to be, join paramilitaries. And our street alone, Fairfield Street, which was a small street, we next door neighbours either side of us who were shot dead. Margaret McCurry to the left and David McAuley to the right. My sister seen Sid McKee get shot dead outside our front window. Sister Tanya, who's here. My father, Patsy Coco McAuley, he was shot 3 times in 2 separate attacks. He was shot twice by the IRA in 1973, and he was shot in the Avenue Bar. I think it was 88 or 89. And he was in a big car bomb explosion in 1977. And it was the first loyalist bomb to go off at a Republican funeral. But my dad was there that day specifically to speak to the Whalens about his car. And he had just went to turn the ignition in the car when the bomb, well, the car that was parked directly opposite my dad with a bomb in it exploded. And he was very, very lucky to come alive. How he came out of that car alive, I never know. And that day in school, we were sitting in school, and I was sitting beside a wee lad called Frankie Carville. When the bomb went off, I can distinctly remember it like it was yesterday. He went into convulsions and had to be physically restrained by the teacher, Mr. Hicks. And 4 weeks earlier, he was in the car with his daddy when it was stopped in Canberra Street, and his father was shot dead by loyalists in front of him. So, they talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. I didn't know it existed then, but that's what it was with him. I haven't seen that wee lad since, and that was 1977. But he's alive and well, I believe.
Traumatic times, traumatic tale. On a lighter note, you say your father was shot in 3 different places.
He's barred in 3 places.
He hasn't been back to those 3 places. Eamon, growing up in our town, when was the first time you ever thought about putting on boxing gloves? And can you remember the sights and the smells the first time you went in to a boxing club? Where was that?
Well, I was a precocious footballer. I was just totally into football. I was always kicking a ball about or playing around the old school, organising matches, playing matches every day. Loved football. And then our school was one of the most successful. Holy Cross Boys School was one of the most successful football teams ever to come out of that school. And when I went to St Gabriel's at the age of 12, 13, I was picked to go for a trial match to pick a Northern Ireland team. There was 3 lads from our school, me and Tom Austin and Ali Flood. So we went to Somerton. play the trial match, and there was enough players to play off against each other. And my team won 4-2, and I scored 2 goals and featured heavily in the game. And on the way home, my two mates, Tom Austin and Ali Flood, said, "You're sure to get picked," but it never was. And the school teachers in St Gabriel's thought it might have been down to the fact that I was a Catholic. So I stopped playing football that day and discussed and started boxing, much to my father's consternation, because his father, Harry McAuley, a professional pugilist from Portrush, he died at 58 from pugilistic dementia. The blows to the head he took, the blows in the ring he took, put him in an early grave. So my dad was dead set against my boxing. He went to see two youth leaders, Hugo McGee and Mickey Brennan, in an effort to get them to persuade me to go back to the football, but I wasn't for changing. And when I started, he quickly supported me.
Tell me about your amateur career, early teenager. At what stage did you think, my goodness, I have a bit of talent here?
Well, it's well ingrained in the family. As I say, my grandfather was Northern Ireland professional champion, which he won over 15 rounds in them days against Billy Donnelly. He lost it to Jim McCann. He had a 4-fight rivalry with Jim McCann. And that was on my father's side. On my father's mother's side was Randy Monaghan, who was world flyweight champion, as well as British Empire and European champion. So my uncle Sean McAuley is a coach up in Ligoneel now, over 50 years. So the boxing's just well ingrained in the family. And when I went to the gym that night in the Sacred Heart, and under Eamon McAuley, I was just hooked, absolutely hooked. You know, everything about it, the head he got to the spar, you know, the smell of it, just the sweat, everything about it. I was just hooked, and I knew that this is what I want to do.
Moving forward, 17 years of age, you'd gone to work in London, and you entered the ABAs, and coming from Ardoyne, being faced with a man from the parachute regiment, a lot of pressure on your shoulders.
Well, that was the irony. I got through the ABA finals. It was my first year as a senior boxer, and I won all 19 fights that year, many of them by knockout, many of them by one punch knockout. I was a scourge, the featherweights and lightweights and all over England. So yeah, Carl Crook had served in the parachute regiment over here. He'd been 4 or 5 years in the parachute regiment, but he was no longer in the parachute regiment when I boxed him. 3 times combined services champion, ABA finalist the previous year, and then ABA semi-finalist in 1982. He lost to Jim McDonald, who ended Barry McGuigan's career. So vastly experienced. I was up against it, and then that put out a pressure on me that I didn't need. I was from Republican Ardoyne, and I was the boxer paratrooper. If I had lost that fight, I would have had that cost up to me the rest of my life. People would have reminded me, "She'll let that para beat you." I would have never been forgotten. You know, the fact that I won and knocked them out is rarely mentioned now, but you know, if I'd lost, especially with my dad being well known for fighting and beating the paras in the street, you know, they couldn't get one to beat him. They flew in a regimental boxing champion from Germany, 6'3", to challenge my dad. Honest to God, there's probably people here who were there who witnessed it. There's a man at the back guard who we were just talking about it the other week. Colin, that guy was there, the guy we met there the other week from Ardoyne, told us all about it. And my dad knocked him spark out. And after that, the paras respected him, revered him even, and never bothered him again. There used to be graffiti in Herbert Street in the entries, "Coco rules the paras." So following and you know, big shoes there.
Absolutely. I think Coco McAuley deserves a wee round of applause there, because some of the stories that you're listening are absolutely superb. I mean, it was a different era. I mean, your father, was it 10 years he's dead now, Eamon?
2014.
2014, coming up to 10 years. You know, a great influence on you. But then you came back from London after the win in the ABAs. You were coming back to Belfast in particular, that was on a professional boxing high. Talk to me about Mr. Eastwood. I know you never called him Mr. Eastwood, but tell me about turning professional at the height of what was good times in professional boxing.
Well, I would have been happy to stay in London. I love London, and I was living the life there. It was incredible. And Maggie Thatcher brought a rule in that anybody, we stayed in bed and breakfast accommodation, so she brought a rule in that anybody receiving bed and breakfast payments had to be over 25. I was 19, so I had no choice but to come home. And when I come home, there had been a bit of a lull in the violence, but the Good Friday Agreement was signed. Sorry, not the Good Friday Agreement, 1985. Hugh was Anglo-Irish Agreement, thank you, Tom. The Anglo-Irish, so the troubles were all starting back up again, so it was a bad time to come home. But yes, Barney Eastwood's first move to me was he found out the guy had done the security, Mr. Gallagher. His son was living with me in the bedsit in King's Cross. So he'd happened to drop out into the conversation with Barney Eastwood. So Barney Eastwood gave him tickets in for 4 tickets to give to me and my friends to go to the McGuigan Pedrosa fight at Loftus Road. So that was his first introduction to me. So when I come home after winning the ABAs, when I come home to Ardoyne, he had people coming to me. Paddy Byrne called to my house in a big Rolls Royce, tried to persuade me to go with Barney Eastwood. The barber Rob McGuire, Bobby McAllister had me down training in Eastwood's gym, and Barry McGuigan had a great talk with me about going with Barry McGuigan. He says he's the man, he'll do good by you. He's the man to go with, and then the later what happened with them too. But yeah, Barney's a very persuasive man. I wanted to stay amateur and go to the Europeans, the Worlds, the Olympics, whatever, because money can't buy that. You've got that for the rest of your life. But I was only 19, and there was a salmon in a sea of sharks. Me and my daddy weren't getting along at the time, and Barney Eastwood, as I said earlier, was a very, very persuasive man, and he just didn't let up, like a dog with a bone.
In 1985, 1986, £10,000 up front from Barney Eastwood was very tantalising.
Yeah, and when you put this into perspective, when you think of Barry McGuigan, didn't get a sign-on fee, only promises. Dave Boy McAuley, Paul Hodkinson, the world champions, didn't get a sign-on fee. It shows you how highly he thought of me.
And in the, when you started, you were actually bowling them over in the opening rounds. You were making quite an impression, Eamon, in the ring, and you have them all on YouTube. There was some punch you had, and you were getting a reputation.
Yes, I got a good following in Ardoyne and further afield, but yes, half of Ardoyne come down to support me in the Ulster Hall and the King's Hall, and the taxi drivers, the black taxi drivers, would never charge me when I went down to Eastwoods to train, and that was 5 days a week up and down. That was their way of showing a bit of support for me. So, yeah, nothing but good memories. Barney Eastwood took me to Los Angeles, Panama, Colombia. He took me into some rough, tough gyms where they were all queuing up to spar me and Paul Hodkinson because they were getting paid and they were hungry fighters, Colombia and Panama especially. But yeah, sparred a whole load of world champions. Great opportunity. Barney Eastwood's a great man. He done a lot for me. I have no one to blame, sort of, but myself for what happened. But everything was there for me to succeed.
At 19, the phrase you use, Eamon, is a salmon in a sea of sharks. And at what point did you find it was hard to get opponents for you at one stage? You were drifting as a professional boxer. Did you feel that there could have been a bit more of a plan or a strategy laid out for what you wanted to do or where they wanted to bring you?
No, everything was great. It was a great gym. There was, so many world champions. Rubbing Shoulders were world champions and British champions, European champions. Alan McCulloch, Sir Alan was in the gym then, and Wayne's brother Alan was in the gym then too. He boxed professional, and the gym was just so full of talent. The sparring was incredible. Everything was there for us, and yeah, I can't fault anybody. But it was a great, wonderful time. Well, it lasted. It was a wonderful, wonderful time, and I'd have been signing autographs every day. People would have been stopping me, and it was a short time, but it was, it was great. It was great. It was wonderful.
You never actually got to the point, as Barry McGuigan did, where you used to have to get a disguise going up Castle Street.
That's right. Barry used to come into the gym. Incredible support that Barry McGuigan. It was Barry and Amy in this place, and Barry would have come into the gym with fake beards and sunglasses and hats, and such was his fame. And I witnessed this on a daily basis. I sparred Barry quite a few times. Barry was always there for help. I'm a big fan of Barry. I'm a big fan of Barney. I don't know what happened between the two of them, money probably, but they were two great guys. Dave Boy McAuley, Roy Webb. The talent there, Barney Eastwood would bring sparring partners over from England. Barney Wilson would have been the referee, that I needed to knock us out twice to get a draw with Barney refereeing. So everything was in our favour, and I still messed it up.
Well, listen, looking back, your boxing career, it's behind you. You've no regrets about what you did as a boxer, what you achieved. But what was it like coming away from professional boxing and entering into the normal world of everybody else. What year would that have been?
Well, I lost my unbeaten record. I never lost a round in my 6 previous fights. There were I won them. You know, I was sparring brilliant. Bobby McAllister said to me, "You're better than all of them." And he switched him, and I'm like, "Tell me something I don't already know." I went from having no confidence to being overconfident. But a guy called Ollie Furlong was a last-minute substitution, and basically I thought it was unbeatable. I paid for my peccadillos. Yeah, he came in at late notice. It was to fight a guy called Dougie Monroe, and he came in and he was a bit heavier than me, and that was okay. I didn't care, you know. But he was a southpaw, and I always struggled against southpaws, especially counter-punching southpaws. If I could go back and change one thing in my boxing career, I would spar southpaws all the time. You know, I would overcome that. I would overcome that quite easily. But yes, I struggled with dynamite against orthodox fighters. I can't think, and I don't mean to be big-headed, but I can't think of any orthodox fighter who ever. I dominated them all. You know, held me owner dominated them all, no problem. But southpaws I never shone against southpaws. So if I could go back in time, I would change that. I would spar southpaws on a regular basis. And for the fight with Andy Furlong, who came in at 1 day's notice, I hadn't been sparring any southpaws in preparation for that. But there you go. You can make all the excuses I want, but it was a wake-up call for me. It was, I couldn't believe I got beat, and my confidence left me, and my self-esteem took a downturn. And I don't even know, did I take a breakdown after that fight? There was just, it took me years and years and years to get my confidence back. It destroyed me mentally. I cried in my dad's arms that night. He come up after the fight, and Dave Boyd McAuley was top of the bill. He was boxing Roy Thompson, and he was in, the dressing room was empty, and it was just me there, and my dad came into the dressing room. I hadn't been speaking in a couple of years. And he put his arm through me and cried my eyes out. And,
it still sounds as if it's raw, Eamon, you know, but moving on from the boxing, we've done the professional side. I want to talk to you about the family ties, and I want to speak to you particularly about a very proud achievement that you were involved in, pivotal in leading in 2015. That was the erection of the statue to Renty Monaghan in York Street. Renty Monaghan, of course, family relation, but you did it for your Uncle Tommy. I want you to talk about your involvement and why you wanted to see that happen.
I also want to thank you, Barry, for being pivotal in getting a John Caldwell statue, because that wouldn't have happened without you. You were a main mover in that. The Renty Monaghan statue was one of the proudest moments of my life, and it just all went so smoothly. That's when we met, and we had many meetings over a period of years in the City Hall, and I had went to Alex Mosky to ask him could he get a statue of Renty, but he told me a guy called Barry Flynn, the first time I ever heard your name mentioned, had approached him about getting a statue about John Caldwell. So he says, why don't we marry the two of them together and include the great contribution that boxers have made from the Shankill Woodvale area and go for 3 statues? So that's what we did. And yeah, what a wonderful day that was. March the 20th, wasn't it? March the 20th.
It was a sunny day, is what I can remember, and the place was packed out. Just to give you by way of background, there was a famous book called As I Roved Out, and the introductory line to it is that Belfast dearly loves a lord and a lady. And you can go through the streets of Belfast and you will see people like the Donegals and the Chichesters. Battenberg Street, that's named after one of the Chichesters' other sort of titles. We'll do everything in Belfast rather than celebrate people from Belfast. So basically, we sat down and made the argument that Renty Monaghan was from Belfast. Renty Monaghan brought pride to the streets of Belfast. Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, they own this city. But it's a penalty kick to say, let's commemorate somebody who was a son of Belfast. So of course, the first thing everybody says, well, that's okay, Renty Monaghan. What about George Best? And I says, well, he's got an airport, okay? We want to celebrate Renty Monaghan, who was a world champion when there was only 8 world champions in 1949, a period of austerity after the World War, where he brought, there was bonfires on the streets, whenever he did that. But he was somebody from Belfast related to Eamon. We made the case, and I tell you, it was a hard case to make, but eventually we did that, Eamon, and justly proud we were that day. And talk to me about, there was a great bit of showmanship on the day where you asked everybody to stop for 30 seconds and listen. Explain that.
Rindy's voice come over the Tano when Irish eyes are smiling, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house. It was very emotional, and to hear Rindy's voice, his daughters and all there, that was just incredible. That was wonderful moment, poignant moment.
And your uncle Tommy, who was Rindy's brother, I think it was his dying wish, and he held on. He came back from America. We were trying to get him, we were trying to say it's going to happen, it's happened, but everything came together, and I think it was the proudest day.
Oh, that was incredible. Yes, people come over, Monaghan's come over from a horde of Monaghan's come over from America, and yes, to see Tommy so happy. Tommy died less than a year later. I think it was his dying wish. He knew he was dying, and he gave an interview that day. He got very, very emotional, and I've nothing but fond memories. Tommy was the youngest in the family, and nothing but fond memories. Me and Tom used to fight the peace out. Tommy could be a bit sort of cantankerous. Maybe I can be too. But when I've talked about politics, about sport, we always disagreed. But but at the same time, I love Tommy. He rang me up the week he died, and don't want to get emotional again, but he told me he loved me.
Lovely words, well said, Eamon. Nice words, well said. We'll move on. We'll just be last couple of questions. Your heart is in Ardoyne. You were born there. Ardoyne courses through your veins. What does that place mean to you?
Ardoyne, that's where I'm from. It's who I am. Born and reared in Ardoyne. Lived there all my life, but for 3 years in England. The people of Ardoyne have had to suffer and endure tumultuous, dreadful, horrific things. But the Ardoyne people are good, dignified people, and they've gone through so much. As I say, I will never detach myself from Ardoyne. I am Ardoyne. Ardoyne's in my heart. And North Belfast as a whole. I'm a proud North Belfast person. Yeah, no doubt about that. I'm proud of where I come. I'm proud of my roots, and I don't pretend to be anything that I'm not.
Well, I must say, I mean, your life has been a lot of trials and tribulations and stresses. Following Cliftonville may not have helped.
Yes, I was there in 1979 when they won the Bass Irish Cup. Tony Bell's last minute winner against Portadown, and Tony Bell was from Portadown, and that solidified me with Cliftonville. Love them, they're in my DNA. Love Cliftonville, love them with all my heart. And we just lost out to the Blues by a point there last season, so looking forward to this coming season.
So you're only 50, whatever years of age, and you've achieved so much boxing wise. You've got this book. As I always say about people who publish a book, your story is there forever and ever. It could be in cyberspace or whatever, but your story is down. For the rest of your life, do you think there's a few more chapters?
Just one more wee story about Cliftonville. I remember them coming to the Ardoyne Youth Club. We would have been maybe 12, and they came to the Ardoyne Youth Club. And I mean, to me then, it was like the Beatles. Coming to the Ardoyne Youth Club, and we were looking for scraps of paper, anything to get them to sign their names. And honestly, as God is my witness, we were shaking their hands. I never washed my hands for days. And I mean, I never washed. I was only Cliftonville, but to me then, they were superstars. But my future is to continue to get closer to God. That is the most important thing for my heart, to be closer to God, make that the centre of my life. That's what my future is. Also, of course, at the St John Bosco Boxing Club. I want to continue to do that and reach out and help people. And I just want to try and be a better person every day. That's my heart and half.
Well, Eamon, I must say it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I think we've talked for about half an hour. I think you've been on the verge of tears and 2 or 3 times. But folks, I always say wise words, well spoken, and I would recommend this book to anybody because what we have in here is a story, And it's a story that's written from the heart, and it's a story that's written by a genuine guy, and his name's Eamon McAuley. And I want to thank Eamon for coming here today and speaking so openly. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask people out there, is there anybody would like to ask a question? Because I've only pricked the surface. Mr. Hugh Jordan, go ahead, Hugh.
Eamon, pleasure to listen to you. Simply enough, the question I want to ask you is not about boxing, but you said about your love for Cliftonville, and I just wondered if you remember in the days when there was a cage round the pitch at Solitude, and the famous Glasgow Celtic arrived one day, and I think the RUC organised a picnic for the locals or something. And I wondered, were you there that day?
No, I was 1984. I was living in England then. Between 1982 and 1985, I lived in England then. Unfortunately, I missed that.
I went to a Cliftonville match once, and a football game broke out in the middle of a riot. Anybody else like to make a comment or whatever? There are signed copies available if you come up and see Eamon here, okay? Yourself, sir, your name is?
Darren. All right, Eamon.
Okay, Darren.
Just a wee question. We're about the same age. How do you keep your hair that colour?
Well, my dad had jet black hair, but if I keep the sides in the back really short, you know, I keep the grey hairs away. If I was to let it grow a few months, I would go grey the sides and back. That's a secret.
I think it's great genes. Barry McGuigan once said that to me. He says, you've got great genes. And I went, what are you talking about? I was wearing cords. Anybody else like to make a comment?
Lift your chair.
All right, son.
All right, Dylan. How long did it take you to read your book, and what inspired you?
As God is my witness, I never wrote a book for it to be published. It just gave me something to do. I just wanted to write stories, and as I say, my dad, I wanted to write about my dad. I didn't want my dad to be forgotten. But it was a real joy. Over a period of years, I was about to release the book. I was about to go looking for a publisher when Eamon McGee's book came out, and that set me back a few years. You know, so it was on a few years, definitely. And I want to thank Trevor Gordon still here. I want to thank Trevor Gordon because Trevor Gordon was instrumental. The book wouldn't have happened without Trevor Gordon, because he was there with me. He shared my passion. He sent the book off to publishers, put an awful lot of hard work into it. I had him taking out stuff, saving stuff. I had him tortured. So Trevor was the main guy that I want to thank for my book. Wouldn't have happened without him.
The other thing is, Eamon, I must say that the Leadenhall Library has a copy of your book, which is an absolute privilege. That's there forever, part of the Irish History collection. But one thing I will say about reading this book, if you read it from cover to cover, you actually feel sore at the end of it, because there's that many digs thrown and that many people got a dig in the mouth and so many rough fights, whatever. It really is, it's raw, there's everything.
There's no opponent of mine now. Look, Alan McLean, he'll tell you first hand.
Just go ahead.
I know what it's like to get hit by Eamon. I caught him in was the Shamrock Club, was it?
Shamrock it was in
We had some
1881.
scrap that night. But I'm just glad that when I hear he's ABA champion and all, I should fight with Stevens.
Your name is, sir?
My name's Alan McCall.
Alan, how are you? Good to see you. Well done.
An ex-pro.
An ex-pro.
We had a tremendous fight, absolutely fantastic fight.
Like he said, and
Punched the head of
he's
each
his
other.
gym. Unbelievable. The heat in there too. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
One
In
round,
1981,
just
it was
fucking
Munster
stress,
year. A wee lad from the Shankill coming up the yard down the Shamrock Club. Wonderful, just
We
beautiful.
had some fight that night. We did. I mean, the Shamrock Club made me feel so welcome, and so did Eamon. I hardly knew Eamon at the time, like right now. But as for a puncher, I've just realised I found the Stevens.
When you box each other, you become friends.
I'd say so, Eamon. I was just wondering, what was that, 40 years ago?
40 years.
What about a rematch? Here in Waterstones right now. See what happened. Has anybody else got a comment they'd like to make? Trevor, would you like to just say a word about your relationship with Eamon and how this guy, you helped him along the way?
Yeah, it was a real privilege. I worked in the Ardwine Library, and Eamon would come in, and I knew that he wanted to get down on paper just some of the memories that he had, acquired over the years. And every day it was a real joy coming in and seeing like the story taking shape bit by bit by bit, and you could sort of see, hang on a second. I think, to be honest, even you put it down because you wanted to have something that you could tell the kids and you could tell your family, and you didn't necessarily see the potential of a book in it. And when I read it chapter by chapter, it's like, not only a book, you can make a film out of that. This guy's life is just, people need to know about it. They really do need to know about it. You need to get it out there, and I'll help you all I can. And it was no problem finding a publisher because it was snapped up. So.
Trevor was instrumental. Trevor encouraged me to write the book. I wouldn't have done it alone.
Trevor, of course, the last time I think we met, we were up at the library with the schools in cross-community event. It was fantastic, and Eamon was leading that day with Renty's Belt, which is a thing of beauty, a joy forever. And we're doing a talk in the Lindholm Library next week. Hopefully we'll be getting Renty's Belt there. Any more comments? Sorry, at the front. Your name, sir?
Declan Armstrong.
Go ahead, Declan.
I was going to say it's very well written, Eamon, brilliant. And are you doing any more? Do you have any more plans? Do you have any more books or anything?
Well, I've been helping Barry with a book about the market boxers. Hopefully that'll be out soon. Doing a wee bit of what's the word I'm looking? Background stories and stuff like that. Research. I've done the research. Barry, he's wrote it.
With Barry?
So yeah, it'll be another one.
Yes, we're working on a story about the boxing in the market area, and also the general sort of history of the market area. And hopefully there'll be something coming up. It was put back by COVID. Anybody else got a wee comment?
So what are you doing with the pulled cat face down there at the back? You have a question? Yes, you, yes.
If he's want to come up.
Darn. Livingstone, aka Leg. You've got a question, haven't you?
Well, you were talking about you being a big puncher. Who was the biggest puncher you faced in Spawn or the
See this guy here. Listen, I'm a coach now. He's my first champion. And this guy is a precocious talent. He's going to go a long, long way. Darren Legg, aka Livingstone. Precocious. He's got me excited again about boxing. And
very good. Remember that game, everybody, and that is a tribute and a half, Darren. So an awful lot to live up to. He's going to pay you 10,000 up front if you turn professional.
Hardest puncher in boxing.
Spawn or
Spawn.
neither?
Pound for pound.
Finish the question.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. The hardest puncher that I was ever in the ring with. Alan McCulloch. And Bernard McComiskey. Just sitting behind him, who I sparred many times. Another ex-pro, great fighter. McGuigan. McGuigan, probably, yeah, McGuigan, yeah. I sparred about 15 world champions. And, I was good, but it wasn't that good. McGuigan was on a different level. He wasn't a different, he was on a different level. The strength that man, for a 9-stone guy, the strength that he had, and his big hands, he used to wear 18-ounce sparring gloves. He was by far the best.
I'll tell you what, the definitive history of the McGuigan era in Belfast and the professional story of Belfast in the 1980s has not been written. And if there's any man that's got an insight, stories, and a knowledge of the people who were involved on a personal level, there's a second book sitting waiting there. Okay? Any other comments as we